Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures. I'm Big Lee, and this week I want to discuss the QRS Conundrum, the pros and cons of quick reference sheets. So wargaming has long relied on comprehensive rulebooks to guide players through the intricate dance that is our wargame scenarios. However, as these rulebooks have grown in complexity, the need for concise and accessible guides has become very apparent. Enter the quick reference sheet, a tool designed to streamline gameplay and bring together the key rules and tables. Now, while QRSs offer numerous benefits, they also come with a few drawbacks that maybe aren't apparent straight away. So today I wanted to talk about the pros and cons of quick reference sheets in wargaming rules, discuss their impact on gameplay, accessibility and player engagement. And I want to ask, do you love them or hate them? And have you ever written your own QRS because you thought the official version missed something out or was just unhelpful? Now, one of the primary advantages of a quick reference sheet is it boosts gameplay efficiency. By condensing essential rules, tables and charts into a single, easily accessible document, QRSs minimise the time players spend flipping through the rulebooks. This in turn allows for smoother and faster gameplay, keeping the focus on strategic decision making rather than rules consultation. Now, for example, a QRS can provide quick access to combat resolution tables, movement rules, special abilities, ensuring that players resolve actions swiftly and keep the game moving along. So while the rulebook can expand and explain why rules work the way they do, the QRS summarises the essential nuts and bolts of the rules, without which the game wouldn't work. Now, wargames can be daunting for newcomers with their dense rulebooks and steep learning curves, and quick reference sheets serve as an invaluable aid for new players, offering a simplified version of the rules that can be quickly understood and referenced during play. Now, this reduces the intimidation factor and makes it easier for beginners to join and enjoy wargames without feeling overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information that's contained in the main rulebook. And by beginners, I'm also including experienced wargamers here. They may be trying out a new set of rules for the first time, and that seemingly impenetrable rulebook can put even an old grognard off before they've got started. Now, in the heat of a game, players must make numerous decisions, often under a bit of time constraint. So a QRS helps reduce the mental load by providing a distilled version of the most critical information. By having the essential rules and tables at their fingertips, players can focus more on the strategic choices rather than recalling detailed rules from the memory. And this can lead to more engaging and enjoyable gaming experience, as players can immerse themselves in the tactics rather than the rules mechanics. Now, one of the other advantages of a well-written quick reference sheet is that they can be handy stand-ins for the rulebook themselves. Why have multiple copies of the rules cluttering up the table when you can have one as a reference copy for tricky adjudications, and then several copies of the QRS to aid play so that the game can move quickly? This is especially useful when introducing a set of rules to new players, or when umpiring, where the umpire may only have to have one copy of the rulebook around the table. Now, on the flip side, there are some problems with quick reference sheets that often get overlooked. Now, while the primary purpose of a QRS is to simplify access to rules, there is a risk of oversimplification. In condensing the rulebook, nuanced rules and exceptions may be omitted, leading to an incomplete understanding of the game. This can result in gameplay that deviates from the designer's intended experience, or where misinterpretations become embedded in that group of players' understanding of the rules. Players who rely solely on quick reference sheet may miss important subtleties and strategic depth that are only fully explained in the main rulebook. Now, despite their utility, quick reference sheets are not standalone documents. Players must still refer to the main rulebook for comprehensive explanations, clarifications and examples. This dependence can disrupt the flow of the game if players need to frequently cross-reference the quick reference sheet with the rulebook. So the effectiveness of a QRS is therefore contingent on its ability to accurately represent the most crucial aspects of the game without sacrificing detail. Now I often find I want to enhance, expand or sometimes completely rewrite quick reference sheets to help me understand rules and have the best reference material available during gameplay. So for example, I recently wrote an extra quick reference sheet to cover melee combat in Test of Resolve, covering every step of the process in much more detail. However, this can create new problems because accurately distilling a complex rulebook is challenging. There is a risk of including errors and misinterpretations or even outdated information, especially if the game undergoes several revisions and updates. An inaccurate quick reference sheet can mislead players and create confusion, undermining the purpose as a reliable reference tool. And ensuring that the quick reference sheet is regularly updated and reviewed is essential to maintaining its accuracy and usefulness, especially true if you've written that quick reference sheet yourself. Now, by their nature, quick reference sheets focus on the most commonly used rules and mechanics. This limited scope means that less frequently encountered rules or edge cases may be excluded. In complex wargames with diverse scenarios and special conditions, a quick reference sheet might not cover every possible situation, necessitating frequent referrals to the main rulebook. This can be frustrating for players who expect the QRS to be a comprehensive guide. Personally, I think every quick reference sheet should include an important disclaimer at the bottom: requires player action, please read the rules. Now, quick reference sheets play a pivotal role in enhancing the wargaming experience by offering a streamlined and accessible summary of key rules. Their benefits include improved gameplay efficiency, better accessibility for new players, reduced cognitive load on the players themselves, portability and standardisation of rules interpretation. However, they're not without their drawbacks, as we've discussed. Ultimately, the effectiveness of a quick reference sheet hinges on its design and its execution. A well-crafted quick reference sheet serves as a bridge between the complexity of the rulebook and the practical demands of gameplay, ensuring that players can focus on the game. So as always, I want to ask, what do you think about the use of quick reference sheets in rules? Do you have examples of particularly good or particularly bad quick reference sheets from games that you have played? Not just current games, but games way back in the past. And have you ever decided to improve or expand an existing quick reference sheet that you felt lacked something, that you felt that should have been included in the original? As always, I'd love to know what you think in the comments below. So time for a hobby update, and last week, as mentioned last week, the redirects were at Broadside last weekend, and Ray ran his Haitian Revolution game, the Battle of Croix de Bouquet. I'll make sure I put a link to his blog in the description below, and I urge you to have a look at his excellent work he did on the project and his write-up of the show itself. We all gathered really early for the show down and got to load up the cars and head off to Gillingham. It's only 20 minutes away from Reject HQ. Judging from the emptiness of the hall, we were perhaps a tad too eager because we were one of the first groups to arrive, and in fact by the time we'd finished setting up we had 2 clear hours before the show was actually due to open. But that wasn't such a bad thing, because it gave us a little bit more time to discuss the rules and the history that we were going to talk about with the public, and it also gave us all time to have a quick look around at some of the traders and the flea market before the show actually opened to the public. I picked up some really nice 15mm buildings for my Normandy setting at just 50p each. A bargain I just couldn't walk away from. They need a little bit of work, just gluing joints and things like that, but I've got myself 5 buildings there for £2.50, so a bargain. Of course, I haven't got room for any of these buildings, and it's made all the more frustrating because I've just gone and bought just a few days before Broadside, I went and bought a load of other 15mm buildings from Empires at War. So they were doing their D-Day 80th anniversary sale, so I bought a load more 15mm Normandy buildings. I'm pondering on the idea of doing a water tanker game set in a large French town or something like that, but that's a project for later on. I'm going to do me Wars of the Roses stuff, get that on the table first, but I'm tinkering with a bit of water tanker at the moment. Now, returning to the subject of Broadside, it's a small show, but it always attracts a really interesting selection of clubs and their games, and a nice selection of visitors. I took a few photos of the games. but not really enough to put together a decent video of the show. This was partly because we were so busy in the morning talking to the public, and by the time things quietened down in the afternoon, I was utterly exhausted. Hopefully the few pictures that I've shared here today will encourage you to follow the link in the description below and have a look at Ray's blog for his show report. As I mentioned, the show does attract a really good selection of people, you know, gamers, people who've never played before, people who've always been tempted to play but have never found a club for them, families turning up, you know. So we had lots of families with kids come around and they were interested in the history. Obviously they were slightly distracted by the wonderful sci-fi games on either side of us, but you know, they get to see a wide range of war games. It's not all just Games Workshop. So in that respect, it's a really nice show to go to, friendly, open, you know, family orientated, with a good selection of traders, people with their own stalls, and of course a good selection of games, and even some LARPers, some cosplayers there as well, just to keep people happy. You know, an interesting show, unique in its feel, I think, compared to the sort of little shows that we normally do in the Kent and South East region. Then on Monday night, the rejects gathered for another refight of the Basangana game with Jonathan Freitag. We played the game a couple of weeks ago and the Piedmontese army took a bashing, frankly. Richard, at the time, put up a good fight, but he was defeated, and he made it sure he was eager to put on the mantle of King Emmanuel a second time and see if he could change the outcome. In this refight he was joined by Ray, and they did indeed put up a sterling fight, but once again myself and Steve, controlling the Franco-Spanish army, got across the river, and the game was almost over by that point. You know, we'd broken both flanks, we'd got across, and then eventually King Emmanuel himself fell in battle, so it came as no surprise when Richard conceded defeat. And this was another extremely interesting and well played game, with the odds definitely stacked against the Piedmontese, despite which they fought really well, and I think everyone actually enjoyed that game, even though it was a bit asymmetric. Then Wednesday night, it was D&D night with my old school friends. Somehow we made it through the evening without being melted by the black dragon that was spitting acid. That particular showdown is going to be left for another day in a couple of weeks' time. But another good night of chat and getting together with friends on Zoom. So time for a very quick Workbench update. I haven't actually done any painting again this week. However, I have been tinkering with lots of little projects. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the 15mm buildings for Normandy have got me thinking about running another water tanker game. This time I'm going to take it down the Shed of War, but I wanted to make some new command dice easier for players, infrequent players, like the rest of the rejects to play. So I've seen a couple of commercial sets, but for a tenner a set, it's not practical for a big game with lots of vehicles where I might need lots of command dice sets. So I have seen some 3D printed versions, but again, I don't have a 3D printer, and again the cost is still prohibitive as far as I'm concerned. So I've settled on buying blank dice and some permanent markers so that I can make several sets of pictorial command dice for myself. It will be a lot easier for players that are trying to pick up the game. Maybe not as aesthetically pleasing as a commercial set, but it will work. I haven't quite finished making these, but I'll show you what I've done when they are finished, and hopefully when I'm done I'll have 8 sets of dice, which should be ample for most group games down the Shed of War. So that's it for this week, maybe a little bit shorter than usual. Please join the conversation in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe and share. It really does help the channel. And if you want to keep up to date with weekly content from this channel, please tap the bell notification icon. So until next week, stay safe, keep gaming, and of course, keep rolling high.